You know, this morning, we're just going to chat a little bit. It's not like a regular sermon thing, 3 points in a poem and all that kind of stuff. It's just sort of a family talk. We're just going to chat a little bit this morning. In fact, I'm going to hear a little bit back from you a little bit later on after we look at a particular video clip. But I just want us to kind of talk about what we've been talking about, really, for the last 4 weeks. I don't know if I've communicated it to you or not, but I got a deep sense of burden about this. I have a deep sense of, I want us to be at a different place. And as a part of this congregation, I want us to be at a different place. So I've kind of got that rolling around within me. So we're just going to kind of talk. And really what we're talking about over the last several weeks is part of a larger picture for the entire year, growing and cultivating the joy of generosity, to be sure. But the last 4 weeks we've been talking about being generous with our time and being generous with our faith, sharing our time and sharing our faith in times of service, but especially in outreach and in evangelism. And really what we've talked about over the last 3 weeks, this is the fourth week, what we talked about over the last 3 weeks is kind of laying a biblical foundation for that. We've looked at 4 passages, and I've talked about these passages every week, all right? So some of you maybe just have this already, your brain and head is just full of it, but here's sort of the theology behind why I think we need to be these people that are generous with our time and generous with our faith. It begins with Matthew 28:18-20, right? That's what we normally refer to as the Great Commission. It is that passage of Scripture that defines, it's the parenthetical notation to everything that we do. It defines who we are, every action that we take. We're to teach and we're to baptize and we're to teach. Whatever else it is that we do, whatever else it is that we're involved in, somehow, somewhere along the way, we understand that we are sent people and we got a purpose in being sent, and what we've been sent with is a message. All right? So no matter how many people we might feed or how many things we might do, how many service projects might roll around the block, unless we share a message, we've just straightened deck chairs on the Titanic, right? Because that ship's going down. There's a message that changes the lives of people. It's a message that's changed you. There's a message that has changed you. And you believe it with all of your heart. That message is the message that needs to be communicated. And then we looked at a couple of passages from John. John chapter 17, verse 18, and John chapter 20 and verse 21. Again, we've talked about this over the last couple of weeks. Jesus said both of those statements. He said it about 3 days apart. First time he said it was on a Thursday night to his disciples. The next time he said it was the following Sunday night to those disciples. What was happened in between was the death, burial, and his death and his burial and his resurrection. And what he said was, as the Father has sent me, so I'm sending you. Right? Just like I have gone, I am sending you to go. And how did he send? How did the Father send the Son? He sent him in the flesh. Not to stand behind a pulpit somewhere or sequester himself behind the walls of a synagogue, but he sent him out into the people, into the world of the people. And he took their burdens, and our brokenness, and our shame, and our suffering, and our sin, and our idols, and our addictions. He made it his own. He said, as the Father has sent me, that's how I'm sending you. He sent the Son to redeem creation, and that's what we're about. That's what we do. That's what we're about. Then we looked at 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 14 through 21. And I want to tell you, that's the kind of the icebox passage. You want to take that passage and put it on your icebox for about, at least 10 years, so you can see that every day. Paul describes beautifully this sort of interplay that moves from looking at the sacrifice of Jesus that fills us with passion, how that passion turns to compassion for people, and how then we realize and understand that we're ambassadors for Jesus with a message. And he says that message there is this, that Jesus became sin for us. Well, it's powerful, it's potent. Jesus became sin for you and me. And then this fourth passage that sort of fills out that picture is 1 Thessalonians 2, verses 1 through 20, where Paul shows us how all of that dynamic comes into play for him, how all of it fits together, how all of it happens, how he felt about those Thessalonican folks and how he handled them and how he dealt with them. And there's something in that for you and me, all right? So what I want us to do is just really, I know we've talked about it the last 3 weeks, but I'm not done. Something doesn't feel right yet. You know what I'm saying? I just want us to kind of, not in a real organized kind of way, I just want us to think about that a little bit. You know why? Because what we are really in here is a bunch of frogs. We're a bunch of frogs in here, and I'm the biggest toad of all right, standing up here talking here to you guys. But we're frogs, and I'm making a reference to the frog in the kettle story. Have y'all heard that story? Actually, there's two frog in the kettle stories. Did you know that? One of them is where the frog falls into the kettle, and it's filled with cream, and he can't get out, so he kicks his legs all around, and finally he turns that cream into butter, and he has solid footing, and he jumps out. And so the moral of that story is you try hard and you work hard and you take all the difficulties and you'll find solid footing and everything's going to be okay. And that's a neat story. The one I'm thinking of, though, is a little more sinister than that, a little darker than that, where you try to put a frog in a pot of boiling water. By the way, has anybody ever tried to do that? Put a frog in boiling water, and what's he going to do? Yeah, he's going to jump out. And I don't know anybody that's ever tried that, but I just know that. I intuitively feel that, right? Because I know that's what I do. If you stuff me into a pot of hot water, it better be you and 4 neighbor kids going to hold me down, right? Because I'm going to come out of there, all right? So the deal, and this is not a story so much as it is a moralism. Have you heard this? How this works? Okay, you put him in the boiling water, he's not going to stay. But if you put him in a pan of room temperature water, let the old frog just sit there for a little bit, and gradually and incrementally crank up that heat, he'll just sit there and ribbit and never move until he keels over from death by heat exhaustion, all right? He'll just die. Now, I don't know that anybody's ever done that, but I feel that it's right. And you know why I feel that's right? Because that's me. And that's you. Gradual change is almost imperceptible. And that's what happens when you wake up sometime and you say, wow, I never thought I'd say that. Wow, I never thought I'd do that. Whether it's good or whether it's bad, those little changes kind of go on slowly, and you don't realize until all of a sudden things are just different. You know what we are? I think we're frogs. That's why I'm telling you that story. I'm going to break the metaphor here just a little bit. We get to croaking around here in our little kettle, in our little pot, talking our little church words and doing our little church subculture stuff. And we're busy. I'm not saying we're not busy. We're busy, aren't we? All kinds of things going on. Super busy. But I don't know that we make sense. I don't know that we're making any sense at all to the world around us. I've made some statements over the last couple of weeks that have been kind of hard to take. And one of the statements that I've made is, and I want you to think about this just for a second. One of the statements I've made is that people are not attracted to church anymore. Now, maybe that's not a revelation to you guys. You've known that for a long time. But I want us to hear it and see it and say it and smell it and breathe it and feel it. They're not attracted. They're not just normally attracted to church anymore. There was a time when people were. Church was kind of the center of what's going on in the world, kind of the center of community and community life. No longer is that the case. Jesus Christ is just one voice among many. And back in the day, we lived in a culture that kind of supported Judeo-Christian values. Would you agree with that? Not that many years ago, the culture we lived in supported Judeo-Christian values. It's not that way any longer. And I don't mean by several years ago when that was the case, I don't mean that nobody committed adultery or nobody lied or nobody killed. That'd be dumb for me to say a thing like that. They did that, but they were ashamed of it. You know what I'm saying? There wasn't a sense of acceptance about all of that stuff and more. There was not a sense of acceptance about it. And so whether people went to church or not, culture kind of propped up church. Why are y'all looking at me like that? Y'all know what I'm talking about? Do you have a sense about that? Okay? Or if you disagree with me, we'll talk about it, but not right now, all right? We'll just take my word for it, all right, right now? It propped us up. It just propped us up. And so we could be attractional. Here was the idea. And by the way, everybody in here, we don't know church any other way than what I'm about to describe. We've operated church under the belief that if you put together the right set of programs and you get the right kind of attractiveness about you, they're going to come. And at one time, to some degree, that was a little bit true because culture propped us up. It ain't true any longer. It's not true anymore, not at all. Used to, you could say, man, you ought to be in church. And whether he'd ever been to church or not, he'd kind of say, yeah, I know, I probably really ought to do that. Not anymore. Not anymore. It's not the world that we're in. Things are changing, folks, and we're not smelling it. We're not feeling it. There's a line, J.R.R. Tolkien. You ever heard of that guy? Wrote a book, Fellowship of the Rings, Lord of the Rings. Peter Jackson made a trilogy of movies about it. In Fellowship of the Rings, there's the elf queen, Galadriel. I don't know if have I pronounced her name correctly? Galadriel. Galadriel. Thank you. In the movies, it's played by Cate Blanchett. underestimated actress in my way of thinking. But anyway, she's the elf queen. And she's talking to Frodo, the hobbit, about the changes going on in Middle Earth. Middle Earth is the place where all of this fantasy happens. And she turns to Frodo and she says, things are changing, Frodo. And it was a pretty dramatic moment in the film, pretty dramatic moment in the book if you're into reading the literature more than you are seeing the movie. Pretty dramatic moment. But Cate Blanchett played that so well. There's changes coming, Frodo. I feel it in the earth, and I feel it in the water, and I smell it in the air. You don't know how many times I've seen that quote pop up in writers talking about what's going on in our world. Folks, we are living in a time, in our lifetime at least, of unprecedented change. There's a whole new world emerging. And we're sitting in here like a bunch of frogs, not paying attention. We're not listening. We don't realize how, in the eyes of the world, how irrelevant we have become. And it's most noticeable in our younger generations. You hear me? But as each year goes by, really as each decade goes by, it reaches higher and higher and higher up that demographic strata, up that demographic ladder. We are not perceived as being relevant. As I was thinking about all this a couple of weeks ago, by the way, when I need to get off by myself here at the building, I don't do it in my office because my phone is there and so I go the furthest away I can, and that's in the WBS room over here. Do y'all know where that is? It's that farthest classroom over this way. Y'all all with me here this morning? Okay, I'm just chatting, right? So I go in this room, and I'm leaning against, I've got the curtains open, and I'm trying to think about really where we are, what are we doing, and what have I been talking about, and what am I saying? And I'm leaning against the wall, looking out the window at about a jillion cars that drive by this place. Y'all, airport is busy. It's busy. And not only that, 59 right there is busy. I mean, there's cars. And I got to wondering, what do they think goes on in here? What do they think is happening in this place? If they even think about it at all. And if they do they have a serious thought about it? Probably not. The world has changed incredibly. In fact, there's a label that people put on that. Some people call it, the world that we're living in now is the postmodern world. Have you heard that term? Modern meaning we're rational thinkers. We're going to base things on the facts and all that sort of stuff. All right, that's been around for several hundred years, modern thought. Now people are saying we're in the postmodern age, where rationality is not the key issue, but what you feel is the key issue. And if it feels right, it may be closer to being right than no matter what the rationality behind it may think. So they call it a postmodern age. You know what? We're not even geared to deal with things that way. Honestly, what are we doing in here? Even in our worship assemblies, what are we doing in here? Geared primarily toward that rational self. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I'm telling you, it does not connect with the world that we're in. You hearing what I'm saying? Do y'all hear what I'm saying? Yes. You can disagree with it, but you just hear what I'm saying. It's not. Here's another term that people stick with it. Post-Christian world. How does that one strike you? That we are past the Christian age. And you know what? Now listen to me. That's true. Here's why it's true. What I said just a moment ago. There was a time in American culture when church was the center, and even if people didn't agree with what you did, they upheld the Judeo-Christian values. That is not true any longer. And the help that we had from the culture in propping us up is no longer there. It's no longer there. So if we think, by the way, do you know what the North American church is? And I don't mean just us, our flavor. I'm talking about across the board. Do you know what their general approach has been to this for the last 50 years? Ignore it. We have fed it with huge infusions of denial, thinking that the world will one day come to its senses and we'll get back on track. That's not happening in our lifetime. Hear me on this, y'all. the approach to church that says if we get the right programs together and if we get the right attractional stuff together, they're going to come beating the trail. No. You know, I tell you what, now listen, I'm not against being attractive and I'm not against having good programming. In fact, you know better than that. Absolutely, I'm for that. But do you understand, that's not for the majority of the world out there. That's for people that have been inoculated already. You hear what I'm saying? That's for emergent generations and that sort of thing. I think we really need to look seriously at how we do worship. I think we need to look seriously at how we go about church if we're going to be relevant in our world. Now see, I know that you had that sense, just like Galadriel. Is that right? Okay. What was the point I was going to make about that? I know you have a sense, just like she does it. There's changes out there. I know that you know that. I know you sense that. I know you feel that. There's a difference between knowing it and doing something about it. And it's hard for large groups of people to do anything significant about it, even with strong leadership. We've got to start thinking about this, y'all. There's only one thing that I know of, and here's where it all comes down to the fine point. There's only one thing I know of that's going to address this issue. And that's incarnational mission, where we realize and understand that who we are is nothing less than the incarnated body of Jesus. And we've been sent into this world just like He's been sent into this world to touch people. We cannot sit behind our walls any longer lobbing truth bombs at people. Now, I want to say it again. There was a time when that partially was okay because you had a culture that kind of supported it. Am I making sense? Not any longer. We sit out here and we lob those bombs out there, you know, these disembodied truths, and the news pick it up or whatever it is, and they say, oh, these are the people that do. All that does is pushes people away. It just pushes people away. In fact, that's why we have churches. Christianity in general has the image in culture that it has today. All right? And you can find this just about anywhere. Folks that are really studying it from a sociological standpoint, Christianity in the North American sphere, what's going on, how do people perceive it? There are 6 major perceptions that people have of church. I'm not kidding you about this. You can't make this stuff up, y'all. 6 major perceptions. Here's the first one. I got them. I want you to see the first one. Here it is. People perceive church as being being an organized religion with a political agenda. Is it hard to understand how that all came about? Remember back in the 70s, those of you that were around then, Jerry Falwell and the moral majority and all the kind of stuff, and here's the way Christians vote, and you know all that kind of stuff. All right. The first thing that rankles me about that is we're an organized religion. It's not about religion, y'all. It's about life. This is about discovering what we were built for. See? But that's the perception. That's the perception that we're dealing with. Just go ahead and put the other ones up. I'm not going to talk about these. I don't have time to talk about them. Here they are. They perceive us as being negative and judgmental. Not hard to see that, is it? You see some of the protests and the marches and the things that go on. Dominated by males and oppresses females. They see the church as being homophobic. They see the church as arrogantly claiming that all other religions are wrong. They see us as being full of fundamentalists. And by the way, that's not a popular term in our culture. That's what those Middle Eastern religions are, right? That bomb people. Fundamentalists who take the whole Bible literally. Now, you got feelings about all of those things. Maybe we ought to spend some time talking about all of that stuff. I'm telling you, though, that's the perception. Did you realize that the majority of people in America, according to surveys, don't even know a Christian? It's hard to grab a hold of that right here in the Bible Belt, isn't it? Listen to me. The majority, according to survey, the majority of people living in America, not only have they not been to church, they don't know a Christian. And if you can find 100 of them that say they know a Christian, 17 of them will say, yes, I know a Christian. And the only difference between them and everybody else is that they claim to be a Christian. There's no impact. Whether you, look here, what I'm saying is, this is where we got to go live. Now, how do you deal with that? Only by incarnational mission do we understand that we are the body of Jesus and we move into this world. Y'all hear what I'm saying? We significantly move into this. How do you overcome that stuff? By throwing another truth bomb out there? No. We move into this world as we touch the hungry and the disenfranchised and whatever it might be, or those neighbors that we have that are jogging this morning instead of doing whatever, all right? You're not going to tell them, oh, you should have been in church. Yeah, whatever. Here's the stuff. Here's where we go. And we do that when we move into the world and we become Jesus to people. Y'all, it's okay to agree with me. Let me see. We have to, we're going to have to do that. Now, here's something I want you to see. I want you to look at this. How many of you ever heard of Penn Jillette? Y'all know who that is? Maybe you know him as Penn and Teller, the comedy guys that do magic acts. They've headlined Las Vegas Act for about 2 centuries. I don't know, a long time. And Penn Jillette is the big guy. Teller never talks, right? But Penn Jillette's the big guy with the ponytail, and he does the talking and all this sort of stuff. Now, what you may not know about Penn Jillette, maybe you do if you keep up with him at all, and I don't know that much about him, but I do know this about him. He is a devout, rabid atheist. He is part of that stuff that's called, you ever heard the phrase new atheism? Is it okay that we're doing this morning instead of having a regular sermon? We're just chatting? Is that okay with y'all? The new atheism, you know what that is? That's that rabid Chris Matthews type of atheism. You go on some of the websites, it's like, wow, what in the world? Who gave these guys steroids? That's what he's like. And he's very open with it, very out front with it. He's written several magazine articles about it. He's written several books, best-selling books, by the way, about his viewpoint. He also does an online blog. Now, I want y'all to take a look at this blog. It actually was about 5 minutes long. I got Van to edit it down just a little bit to about 3.5 minutes. Here's this online blog. I'm not going to tell you what it's about. I just want you to kind of hit it, and then I'm going to ask you what your feelings are about it. Here's Penn Jillette from Penn and Teller. His online blog, about 3 years ago.
I want to talk to you about this. I get home from the show, and at the end of the show, as I've mentioned before, we go out and we talk to folks and, sign an occasional autograph and shake hands and so on. And there was one guy waiting over to the side in the what I call the hover position after I was all done. Big guy, probably about my age. He had been the guy who picks the joke during our psychic comedian section of the show. So he had the props from that in his hand because we'd give those away. And he walked over to me and he said, I was here last night at the show, and I saw the show and I liked it. And he was very complimentary about my use of language and complimentary about, honesty and stuff. And then he said, I brought this for you. And he handed me a Gideon Pocket Edition. I thought it said from the New Testament, but I also thought it was Psalms from the New Testament, right? Psalms from just part of the New Testament. Little book about this big, this thick. And I wanted you to have this. I'm kind of proselytizing. And then he said, I'm a businessman. I'm sane, I'm not crazy. And he looked me right in the eye and did all of this. And it was really wonderful. I believe he knew that I was an atheist. But he was not defensive. And he looked me right in the eyes. And I've always said, that I don't respect people who don't proselytize. I don't respect that at all. If you believe that there's a heaven and hell, and people could be going to hell, or not getting eternal life, or whatever, and you think that, it's not really worth telling them this because it would make it socially awkward. And atheists who think that people shouldn't proselytize, just leave me alone, keep your religion to yourself. How much do you have to hate somebody to not proselytize? How much do you have to hate somebody to believe that everlasting life is possible and not tell them that? I mean, if I believed, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that a truck was coming at you and you didn't believe it, that truck was bearing down on you, there's a certain point where I tackle you. And this is more important than that. And I've always thought that, and I've written about that, and I've thought of it conceptually. This guy was a really good guy. He was polite and honest and sane, and he cared enough about me to proselytize and give me a Bible. Now, I know there's no God, and one polite person living his life right doesn't change that. But I'll tell you, he was a very, very, very good man. And that's really important. And with that kind of goodness, it's okay to have that deep of a disagreement. I still think that religion does a lot of bad stuff, but man, that was a good man.
Okay. I want to hear from you guys. I just want to hear your impression. Were you going to stand up over here, Scott? And you're going to stand up here? Just raise your hand, whatever you want to, just what's your impression about that? Don't feel like you have to, but we're all friends in here, okay? Where are you? What do you feel here? What are your thoughts about that?
My impression of it was, even though he does not believe in God, I think he thought that that individual was really being kind to him. And additionally, I don't think anyone wants to see somebody go to hell. I mean, anyone, no matter how evil you might think they are, I don't think you would hate someone so much that you would want to see them go to hell. And I think that really touched him. I really do. So that was my impression of it.
Well, you can see the would-be preachers in here. They grab that mic and face the audience, don't they? Yeah. You know what? And you're right. And his deal was, how badly do you remember that phrase? How badly do you have to hate somebody to really believe that and not do anything about it? By the way, y'all, a preacher could not have said that better, right? And here's an atheist pretty much saying, look, sit behind your wall and do whatever. What's up with that? Proselytize is what he called it. What else? Somebody else? Yes, ma'am.
That hit me in the gut. It was like, wow. How could you not believe? You know, my 20-year-old was baptized in August a few years ago, and she turned around and attempted suicide. She was very angry, and so she got mad at God. There is no God for her today. But she said something funny. Since our relationship has mended, I had to let her walk her own path. And I speak of my life and how Jesus has turned me around. I am not ashamed to talk about it in front of her. Some days she says, I don't really care. Some days. One day she told me that when she has children, she said, even though I don't believe in God, you are going to take my children to church. Because I want them exposed. You know? I can't imagine not having a God.
And the draw in all of that to her though, is not just, is it church? It's what you have done beyond that.
Yeah.
It's you, the incarnational reality of you in that relationship with her.
And our relationship is beautiful today. It is amazing. And that's God.
Yeah, of course it is. Of course it is.
Letting me walk her path.
Yeah. Anybody else? Yes.
I think most atheists and agnostics are just waiting for us to convince them. And what Penn said, that if we really believe that there's a heaven on earth, why aren't we out there convincing everybody? And that he was judging the power of the message by the power and push of our proselytizing.
Very, very perceptive, I think. By the way, did you notice, and I know if somebody else has something to say, your time is up because I got to stop this. But here you are. Did you notice what he was amazed? He was amazed at this guy, right? He said, I don't know how many times the band may have cut this out. He said he called this experience wonderful at least 3 times that I counted. I don't know if they were all here in the edited edition or not. And he said, this is really a good guy. You remember him saying that? This is a good guy. This is a good guy. He had 5 descriptors for him. He was sane, meaning what? Most Christians he knows. Insane, nutty, nut job, fruitcake. Sane, kind. Shouldn't that be who we are definitionally? But he doesn't know. We're too busy sitting back here throwing truth bombs out at people rather than embodying the message of Jesus in their life. Sane, kind, polite. Isn't that something? I don't remember what the other one was. And caring. They cared. How does he know? How did he, what was his, because the guy came to him. The guy involved himself with him. Incarnational reality, folks, fueled by a divine love is what we're called to be. What are we going to do with that? What are we going to do with that? Are we going to continue to be attractional? Yes, we are. We have the best worship we can have in our best program, but we've got to think about touching our world. If Matthew 28, 18 through 20 is our defining parentheses, what will we do about that? We need to get together and talk about it. We need to get together and make some decisions about how we're going to do that. Can we serve you in any way this morning? Let us know about it as we stand and sing.
I stand to praise you, but I fall to my knees. My spirit is willing, but my flesh is so weak. Light the fire in my soul, fan the flame, make me whole. Lord, you know where I've been, so light the fire in my heart again. I feel your arms around me as the power of your healing begins. Your spirit moves right through me like a mighty rushing wind. Light the fire in my soul. I've been